All right. So folks, I'm going to now share my screen and I'm going to give you a quick preview of Louis Sullivan and how he approaches this same question. So this is going to be very brief. This is meant, I'm doing a full meetup on this tomorrow at 4 o'clock. It's amazing what Yasuhiko did today. Now this is Louis Sullivan's version of it. This essay begins this way. He says, if with an open mind, one reads and observes industriously and long, if in so doing, one covers a wide field and so covering reflects in terms of realism, he's likely, sooner or later, to be brought to a sudden consciousness that man is an unknown quantity and his existence unsuspected. So what he's saying is that our idea of ourself is not real. We're not really looking at real. To give you a quick summary of his entire thought using this diagram, you see the center here? He calls it the function. And his principle is form ever follows the function. You see this radiant hexagon? This is your life as it can be and should be, and actually is if you're doing things right. He says form follows function. Imagine this. Firstly, I want to describe it in a metaphor of a tree. He says, remember the seed germ. This is the seed germ. This is the child in you. This is the core of your being. The seed grows. This movement outward is the tree growing into a sapling. It is still very fragile. It still cannot bear fruit. This radiant rectangle right here is that seed turned into a flowering tree, bearing fruit, producing seed that comes back here. This radiance that you see is this loop going back and forth between function and form, function creating the form and form supporting the function, going back and forth. This is life. So everything inside this is life. It's difficult to talk about this, so I do it poetically. Think of this as a mirror. Okay, imagine this diagram as a mirror. You see the radiant hexagon? That is the actual glass of the mirror. And you are actually looking at it. That's you. That is the center here is the core of your being. These are all the virtues. This is your moral nature of using all your faculties to the fullest, all pointed to the core of your being, pointed towards truth, pointed towards goodness. There is a problem with somebody's audio. Hold on. Go ahead and mute. Okay, sorry about that, folks. This is the mirror. This is the core of your being. Pursuing these virtues is what it means to be your true self. Unfortunately, this mirror has a very nice frame. You see this frame? That's the frame. That is the forms that have died. That was your past thoughts, your past feelings, past habits, what you're doing. You can look at them mechanically and identify yourself with that. And you're thinking you're looking into a mirror, you're trying to see that's you. No, it's you're substituting something. Worse, society gives you plenty of this. That's what the feudal mind is about. It will give you these things in mind, in feeling, in expressions, in interactions, and substitute that for your own being. So what Louis Sullivan is saying is that the world is dominated by the feudal mind, what Yasuhiko is calling the egological mind, feudal, in the sense that it is rooted in fear. It says that, look, I am nothing. I'm afraid of myself. So I will hold on to the things that other people have produced. I will cling to, I will be the camel, afraid, not even joyously carrying the burden, but afraid of it, so clinging to it. And this entire essay is about saying, what is this? Now, it's going to be a very radical experiment because I'm going to take this entire essay, which is about 18 pages. I'm going to read it and I'm going to just map it, draw it here in what he's saying. And he actually covers all of this. And he covers what happens when you identify yourself with the periphery. He has a beautiful name for it. He calls it the inverted self. He's saying your true self is here at the core of your being. Look at it in Tao Te Ching. This is the Tao. It is 10,000 things being thought of instead of the Tao. This is the Brahma. This is the Atma. This is the core of your being. This is Maya. This is attachment to the periphery in Bhagavad Gita. This is God. This is Jesus. It is this outward is the grace of God and inward is the Holy Spirit. It's your love of truth, love of goodness. This is you turning your back on the light and moving towards darkness. So this captures all the three books that we've been studying from the Indian, Chinese, and the Western tradition. But Louis Sullivan brings this together and makes this sing like nothing I've ever seen. He is a much, much deeper thinker than any of us are. And he makes this diagram sing. So I'm going to use that as a music to actually animate this diagram. So if you look at this diagram, look at it as a mirror. And one of the crucial point is now consider you looking at this diagram. So you are actually interacting with it. So there is a three-dimensional angle to it. It's you looking at the diagram as if it's a mirror. And you have to make sure that you're not occupied by your individual thoughts, but look at thoughts only in an integrated form, which is wisdom. You don't look at your individual feelings. You look at devotion or bhakti or your love of truth and goodness. You don't look at your individual interactions with people as disparate things, disconnected from each other, disconnected from your feelings, from your thoughts, from your actions, but in an integrated form, which is love. Not, your actions, your, habits, this is all about kind of not dealing with any of these aspects individually, but in integrated form, which is what virtue is about. Virtue is a concept which is dominant in the scribal age. In modern times, we are mostly looking at these things outside. So modern times is really focused on these individual things. What Louis Sullivan is bringing, what all these books like Gita, Bible, Edao is bringing, is this concept of virtue. And Louis Sullivan actually expresses this much better than I've ever seen it done. And I hope you will join us tomorrow. If you have any questions about it, I'm happy to take it now. But the full presentation about Louis Sullivan interacting with this is going to be tomorrow. But I'll take any questions that you have. Go ahead and type exclamation mark. If you would like to, even comment is fine. I know many people are familiar with the diagram, but this is a completely new take on the diagram, I think it's going to be something else. So if you have any comments or questions, you're welcome to ask. We'll start with Jyoti. Jyoti, go ahead.
I consider this diagram to be very pure and very authentic. It summarizes everything so beautifully and that you can keep in your head. And I think I've said that before. If some negativity does arise, then you know exactly what to do, how to dispel it outside and not bring it in the core. So thank you for, this is my comment. Thank you for summarizing everything so beautifully in one diagram, which is a light. It really emits light. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. For people who have seen this diagram before, the new thing that I have done in this version, let me go with, I'll first take comments that everybody has. Rupali.
Shrikant, I love the new dimension of the fold in it, in the vertical axis. This diagram, I'll piggyback on what Jyoti said. It has a lot of possibilities. I've always thought of it as a three-dimensional shape looking from the top. And I'm looking forward to tomorrow's conversation because like you said, what is the human existence? And Louis Sullivan is just, he expresses it very beautifully. So I'm looking forward to tomorrow's conversation, and I'm making this diagram my own by applying it to different areas of my life, whether it's work or personal life. So thank you for sharing this.
Wonderful, thank you. I'll just make two comments. One, so absolutely, I also love this fold. What it has done several things. Firstly, I'm actually throwing this diagram against everything that I know, and I come up with different things. So one of the things that I came up with is that these two are, I mapped it with Jung's cognitive functions. And what this is doing is that this is separating NI and NE. And it also is bringing in, this focus is all about, controlling your attention, keeping it focused on the core of your being is what Raja Yoga or Dhyana Yoga is about. And I was looking at Dhyana Yoga as a relationship between the center and the periphery, but now that has got moved in here. So now all the four main yogas are here. So that's a massive improvement. Secondly, it is completely now fungible with Jung's functions. So a lot of the things that is what work that has been done can be applied here. Thirdly, if you look at it, this entire left side is the right brain. It is the yin, and the entire right side is the yang, or the left brain. So there is so the folding of the diagram like this, on its vertical axis also produces very interesting results. So thank you, Rupali. And I invite everybody to kind of print this thing out and work with it. You can mark it. This is like a mirror. So I do all kinds of diagrams on it to figure out, whenever I'm thinking about myself or interaction with another person or any part of society or my presentation right now, I will map and say, okay, where was I on all these axes? It's a way of thinking about things in an integrated way. Evanik, followed by Evanik first. Go ahead.
Yeah, I love this new dimensions of this diagram. I especially love, I think you had it as just beauty. And it was discipline. I know you were going back and forth between those words, but I think splitting the vertical axis of this diagram into two separate parts, I think it makes it clear. And then you can see from the center, like what it looks like to go, like we were talking about last night, how the center can, you can have the center define the periphery, or you can have, and I think the center, if you're coming in from the center into the periphery, you can see that, like if you, well, actually, let me reverse that, sorry. So if you look outside, right, and if you're going from the periphery to the center, you can see the progression.
Mhm.
And then you can also see how you can have the, like, for instance, I'm looking at devotion. If you're coming from the center, you can see how the center can influence your periphery. Because if your devotion, if you're coming out of the center and the devotion, and then, you know, you can have your devotion affect your feelings. But if you're not careful, you can still see the drifting. So I think that's another dimension that you've added that makes it, you can see how the center can affect the periphery, or the periphery affect the center.
Wonderful. And see, what I found is that depending on how great the thinker I'm trying to interact with using the diagram, the more the diagram gets, it adds more to the diagram. And what I'm noticing with Louis Sullivan is that the dynamism of this diagram is going to go through the roof, of seeing exactly how things are flowing, because it's, see, there is a lot of activity going on here. There is a like swirling movement of going, kind of integration of this different faculties together, and the virtuous loop it produces, how your thoughts, when implemented, become more solid, how your action becomes more effective, and how it transforms your emotions in the process, and how it improves your focus. So that, those kind of loops. Also, this third dimension I'm getting is just incredible, because you looking at the diagram. So how are you actually interacting with the diagram in this? So the paper is right here, and it's you interacting with the paper. And so I'm really looking forward to Louis Sullivan's, going through that with you folks. If you can, please read that, those pages. It's, I think, 260 to 280. But it's not necessary, because we'll be reading it out aloud and going through it. But it's just incredibly profound. It's the most profound part of what he has written, including the kindergarten chats and autobiography. So next up is going to be Jyoti, followed by Penny. Jyoti.
Yeah, I especially like your presentation about center as seed and going sapling, and then shedding seeds, coming back to serve the function. And I think it explains very well what life is all about. It's cyclic. And I like this presentation with the seeds and Tao and Paramatma, Atma in the center. It makes it very authentic. Thank you.
Thank you, Jyoti. Next up is going to be Penny, followed by Elena. Penny.
So this time it's Brian.
Brian, I thought Penny's voice had changed. Sorry, go ahead.
So I also think this is amazing, and for me, it's, like I say, great good fortune to have shared in this. Just one observation and then a comment. When I was teaching a professor, I taught sustainability and sustainable strategies for businesses, kind of how to do good in the world. It was this, and I had an Indian colleague who was also teaching it. And he said, well, you also have to change the minds of the managers. You have to change the people. I guess what the Aristotelians, I'm not so strong on that, but might call the formal cause for all of these strategies. And this is it. This is what he was talking about. I didn't really get it at the time, but I can see that this really complements what I was doing, and I think it really is important. It really is important. The other thing is, just like Rupali, I'm trying to make it my own. I see so many ways. Like, I'm retired now, but this just feels like bringing me back out of retirement. It's pretty exciting. But the one thing that strikes me in making it my own is that I would just under, my quote understanding is I would use the word, I would introduce the word capabilities, strengths, and possibilities in this. In that everything on this, everything that's colored on this is capability. Like we're capable of having feelings that are integrated or as devotion or not integrated. Those are both options available to us. But the strength is in integrating our feelings in a devoted manner, focusing on the center, but integrating the whole self as you've illustrated it here. And the possibilities, I think, the strengths really come to life when we confront the possibilities that we see in the world. So anyway, I just wanted to share with you, number one, I think this is how this has really been, adds a whole dimension to my understanding of something I've been thinking about for decades. And number two, just a couple of the words that I'm using that help me understand it in my way.
Wonderful, beautifully put. Thank you, Brian. So let me integrate those three words. So we live here on this border. Okay, this is where we live. We have capability of being oriented this way. Best way to look at it is through this angle. This is the focus angle. You have the capability of focusing on God, focusing on truth, or turning away from it. So you can either choose to focus this way, turn this way, or turn that way. That is the capability that you have. That's the choice. That is the heart of the choice that you're faced with all the time in every possible way. Strength is your determination to be focused this way through all your faculties. So it is your determination to be oriented towards your function, towards truth, and continuously going through this loop, which is continuous work. It is readiness to be changed, to change yourself in the process. And the possibilities, a lot of the possibilities lie outside. Possibilities is all about bringing these things in this radiant triangle. So for example, all of the knowledge of the world lies out here. Whatever you don't know, which people have produced, lies here. You have to be ready. The possibilities are approaching this, but not getting lost there. If you get just attracted by something else and just stay there, then you're not connecting it to your life. That is being platonic. You have to bring it back into your life and make those ideas fully integrated and part of your wisdom. And that is true for everything. There are all kinds of interactions. There is all kinds of habits. So that's how I see those three terms connected to this diagram. Next up is going to be Elena. Elena, any question, please?
I'm here. Shrikant, yeah, this is great. And I like the way you categorize everything through the geometrical forms. And so tell me, please, why is the focus, attention, and presence are on the left side with the feelings and devotion and not with the wisdom thoughts? It's my first question.
That's the positioning. You have to look at like all of Jung's functions, all of the yogs of bhakti, and try to figure out what are the various ways of putting them together, and you have to make an integrated choice. So that's how you kind of figure out the positions.
Mm-hmm. And then another thing is that thoughts are also based on memory. Habits are absolutely, it's totally 100%. Habits are based on memory. Whatever you remember yourself being, these are your habits. that you're going to implement in the day-to-day life. Thoughts are also based on memory. And when you say memory, what does it mean here, Shrikant?
Okay. This is, so what I'm trying to do is there is space only for one word to capture an entire gamut. There are many theories about each of these things. So there are all kinds of theories of thought, how they're connected with sensing, how they are connected with memory, how they're connected with imagination. And I've had to make many choices. And this is very integrative kind of work. It is difficult to answer because you have to be familiar. You have to be familiar with Bhagavad Gita. You have to be familiar with Louis Sullivan in order to figure out kind of positioning and naming. And I'm open to suggestions. You can write to, so I'm open to suggestions, but it's a highly integrative work. So that's the only way I cannot kind of take it apart to see there are multiple choices of words, and I struggle with words. I've changed the words in order to do that. That's the best I can do. And you need a lot of context to be able to kind of go back and forth on that. So I don't know what to say. The things that what it is it's not like a deductive mechanism. It is a highly inductive thing. So it's like building a house. You're trying to relate all the things, and while each of the design decisions, you are trying to keep track of how everything has to work together. So there is all kinds of things, and I want to make sure that I covers every major faculty that human beings have. And I know that there are multiple theories about how these faculties are related, and I agree with some of them, disagree with many of them, and I have to make all those choices in order to make these choices. Next up is going to be Zheng. Zheng.
Yeah, I really like this diagram. I think it summarizes all the things, all the things we learn actually here in this diagram. And I really like the left brain, right brain, the feeling, thinker, all this. And when I heard you guys discuss, and also Brian mentioned these possibilities, I actually have this wild idea. I don't know, it's just for your reference. It seems this focus only on the positive part, like the good part, like we have thought, they become wisdom. But when you from the thought to wisdom, actually is wider. Basically, you kind of like crystallize into wisdom. So I think instead of a triangle going the other way, maybe you go it backwards. So you kind of like suck out all the possibility, then they crystallize into the center. It made more, then there's outside of this, all the other, because they could go the other way, just for your reference. I just thought that may be the reality.
I'm not understanding. Let me just first make one point about the positive and negative. I'm not saying that this is just
that's
positive. I'm not saying that this is just positive. So what I'm saying is that in the periphery, whatever is there, see, everything that is in the radiant hexagon is living. Okay, so your wisdom is living, your focus is living, but there are things out in the periphery. In the periphery, at least there are 4 kinds of things. One is something that was there, that was living once within you, that is no longer living. So these are your past thoughts, which could actually be living at one point of time, but are actually not living anymore. So you have to get rid of them. So they are here. Second kind of things are other people's thoughts. Okay, so those may be actually part of other people's life, but they are not part of your life. So something that you don't know, for example, that some good thing that other people have done. Third kind of things are things that are deliberately designed, like rationalizations, to take you away from the center. So these are, evil thoughts which are designed for evasion and destruction of human beings. So those are there too. And fourth thing is that all the possible thought is there. So that is basically, it is able to draw everything which is out here. So there is an infinite possibility of both positive and negative. And all of that is here. Wisdom is the thoughts that are fully integrated in the core of your being, and is also integrated with your economic action, with your interaction with other people, with your emotions, with your concentration, and with your creation. That is wisdom. The parts of the thoughts that are integrated. So that's how I see positive and negative. But that was just addressing one part of what you said.
Yeah, so I was thinking, so it's like grapes and wine. So the grapes, you have so many grapes, you try to make wine, and all these thoughts, now some positive, some negative, or some potential become positive. But all these grapes, maybe only a few become the essence of the wisdom. They transform into this wisdom. But a lot of them didn't, or a lot of some maybe lead you to the other way, become a waste. So I think it's kind of this part is more, like you have huge amount of going other way. So I think I see there's a potential of, because I see in life, there are a lot of distractions in life. And like, for example, if you don't put attention to the center, you are easily distracted. YouTube, like they just send you tons of information. And I see that's actually become a huge problem for everybody's life. And that hasn't reflected here,
No, that's all the darkness.
Yeah, I know.
It's basically light versus darkness, and the darkness is infinite. So all the places where you lose yourself completely. So this is darkness, and that is the large part. So this is at least, the part of darkness which is potentially you will know about. There is a lot more. So what I'm saying is that this diagram actually captures the vastness of the negative and vastness of the unknown, because that's all the black territory. So this is, these things actually fall off into that. So there is a lot of things in the history, for example, that have been lost. Those are all here. They were once here that were accessible to people who could bring them back, but they are now here. So that's how I'm capturing it. Next up is Brian.
So I just wanted to say that Jeng's statement really resonated with me. It's something that I was thinking about. And then your explanation, it made perfect sense. The distinction that I was thinking when because I had been thinking about this a bit, is the thoughts that aren't integrated, that don't become wisdom, the tasks that don't become integrated as prudence. All of these triangles that are outside the hexagon, these are, as colored right now, these are things of which you are aware. And except for, you said, well, the things that you are unaware of, you listed as the fourth item in those triangles. And I think what Jane is pointing at, and what I also was sensing, is that if you, in the black there, these are the thoughts that exist in the world, and the other possibilities that you are not aware of. And the things that you've got colored here, these are the things you are aware of. And there's much, much more to the world, good and bad, that you are not aware of. And so I would put, my view is I would put possibilities or all of this black area, and the triangles that are not in the hexagon, these are possibilities you become aware of one way or another. And then the third is that through that you have integrated that you have integrated in a way that gives you strength.
Excellent. I fully agree with that. I think that's a great way of putting it. And Chang and Brian, with both of you, I think that is great. Jeng, I want to make sure that I understand your point. So what you're saying is that the number of, let me try to rephrase it in my words. And I just want to make sure I got everything of what you're saying, because I think I'm still missing something, because Brian did a fantastic job of kind of capturing what he got. And I want to make sure that I have gotten everything that you've said. What you're saying is that the number of possibilities that are out there is very large. Okay, I think the number of possibilities is very large, and the diagram has to show that in some way. And what we are aware of is relatively small of what the possibilities which are not integrated. So this one is relatively small, but there is much larger outside. Was that essentially what you were saying, or you're saying something more than that?
So I was saying it's a thought. You have tons of thought. The wisdom is the distilled of your thought. Wisdom much less. So in this diagram, since thought and wisdom, they're similar amount, but actually the wisdom is kind of essence of all these thoughts, good or bad. And there's some good, very good one become like the wine. Then you have a huge amount of grapes, thoughts. You create only a few essence of the wisdom.
Okay, so firstly, I have to say I agree with you. If I have to do the right proportion, I think it's this little thing over here. I'll have to move all the wisdom and stuff in here. Okay, that's typically what it is. It is much smaller than thoughts. I completely agree with you on that. And then the question is only how to represent it, because the thing is that really,
that's why I think if you reverse this triangle, instead of going smaller to big, go to bigger, like if you mirror this triangle in the thought.
You mean reverse this one?
Yeah, so you
So
can
going,
you see
going out
outward
like this, like that.
Yeah, yes.
There is a problem with that though. The problem with that is that your focus, see this, I'm not looking at it this to cover the nature of reality. I'm trying to use this. So the way of thinking about this, okay, another way. So I'm going to use a metaphor again. This is a mirror for you to point you towards your real self, so that you can look at this diagram and say, how do I look today? Okay. Now this is the glass of the mirror. This is the mirror frame. Okay. Most people look at the mirror frame to find out how I'm looking today. Okay. They look at their past thoughts. They look at their past actions. Okay. They don't even see the glass. Okay. For them, the glass, there is no glass. Okay. There is only frame. Okay. That is the modern condition. Now, what I'm doing is that I'm saying, look, there is such a thing. You can see that there is virtue, and that is the proper focus. So I'm saying focus on this. Now, I agree with you that there are different ways of, again, I'm using metaphor, pardon me for using metaphor. There are ways of designing the mirror frames, okay? And you will see in history, people have designed all kinds of elaborate mirror frames. Typically doing the mirror, the mercury was expensive. So most of the effort went into mirror frames. And that is true for people today. Like most of the people today, when they look into the mirror of saying who they are, it's mostly the mirror frame with a little tiny pieces of here. Maybe they have like a little glass here, and rest of it is thing. So that's what I'm combating. That's what I'm trying to. So that's why I wanted to make the proportion of the things that you should be focusing on. So this is not a realistic portrait of how things are with most people. I'm saying this is the realistic way of how you should be looking at things. If you want to integrate your life, you realize that there are thoughts and they go into it. That's why I've kept the darkness here. So it is humongous. It's like, you can look at it here. You can do all, I mean, the way I think of adding things here is to say that I'm making a pretty frame, but I don't want to distract people from the glass so that they can look at themselves. So that's why I have kept this remember originally I had this larger, I had a hexagon. Okay. And the thinking behind that was exactly what you're saying, that it is larger. So if I put a hexagon here, I can make it as large as I want, and it will be larger than this one. And I can make this inner one as small as I want as compared to the larger hexagon I make for the frame. But then what would happen is that the distinction between the nature of the frame and nature of the glass will be lost. What this is doing is that this is saying is that, you know, there are some thoughts that you have that you're paying attention to, thinking that that is you. That's actually taking you out here. Okay, so don't do that. Please look into the mirror. That's what it is trying to do. And this is a compact way of communicating the importance of morality, importance of being focused on the center. That is why I have kept the mirror frame relatively sparse and put it against this black background. So you know that there is very large frame that you can construct there, anything that you want there, but all of that is going to be bad for you. And just focus on this instead. So that is the thinking behind the design of the frame. Does that make sense to you, Jen?
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, so you want people to focus on the center. That's why I make it
Exactly.
more exaggerated.
Exactly. But I will talk more. Tomorrow I will talk more. Your point is very well taken, that this is very large. This is also very large. But this is about designing. This is like a tool to design your attention, to direct your attention to everything it should be directed towards. So it's a mirror of that kind. Next up is Evanik.
Yeah, so I was thinking of this, and I was thinking of this as like a strainer. So you have all your thoughts, right? And then you put it in a strainer, and then all of the excess gets thrown away. And then those thoughts that the liquid that goes through the strainer is kind of like wisdom, since we're talking about thoughts and wisdom. So you're kind of filtering the thoughts. You're thinking something, and then you're saying, is this going to bring me? I guess the question you can say you're asking yourself is, when the thoughts appear, because you can't help that thoughts appear, but when the thoughts appear, the question that you're asking yourself is this thought going to bring me closer to the center of who I am, or is it going to take me away? And if it's going to take you away, you just kind of put that in the dark, in the periphery, and just let it go. And then you just focus. But if it's something that you focus on, that you need to focus on, is the center. I think the same thing is your feelings, right? Like, we all have feelings about certain things, and half the time those feelings are just that, feelings. And sometimes they're not even based in reality. They're just based on our thoughts, like over here. So you could do the same thing. You can filter that and say, do the feelings bring me closer to devotion to the center or to God, whatever you believe in? Or is those feelings just going to take me away from who I'm trying to be? And then just let those feelings go in the dark, wherever they want to go, and you focus on the feelings that bring you towards devotion. You could do this throughout the whole mirror. So when Jing was talking about the grapes, I kind of got that, because it's the same thing, is that you're filtering.
Yes. No, beautifully put. It is exactly that. It is filtering. You're saying, is this towards the center or towards not, or away from it? And you're using that consistently. And what happens is that, I mean, this is not full. I mean, I've tried to capture, it's difficult to capture the whole thing, but there is tremendous activity going on here inside, because you're working. These are not just sitting there here. They're going back and forth. They're swirling around. It is affected. Everything that you're doing on wisdom is just transforming all these other fields. And so there is a lot of activity going on, and it is actually living things. But anything that is here, which is not integrated, it's a dead thing. It's not really doing much. It's actually stopping you from living. So it's a very different kind of a thing. So I want to capture it. And tomorrow I'm really looking forward to, because Louis Sullivan is a master of this. Okay. And I shudder to think what will happen with him talking about the same points here. Brian. By the way, folks, these are fantastic feedback. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you. Please go on, Brian.
So I appreciated your comments and discussion both with Jang and with Evanique on Jang's comment. I guess I think you're all right, and it's prudent to be very judicious on this chart. It's really working very well the way it is. But I will say that my understanding of the black is very similar to Jang's. And if I were to label the, if I were to label the black, I'd call it all possibilities in the world. And the if you want to distinguish it from the colored parts, it's all possibilities in the world of which you are not aware, because the colored stuff is stuff you're aware of. So that's the one thing. But that's, I mean, that's just, I'm just telling you, that's like, doesn't contradict or disagree with what you're saying. It's just how I am.
No, I'm fully with you there. Fully
Yeah.
with fully.
Now, the other thing is with Evanique, it struck me all of a sudden, and here, you know, we talked a lot about the center, and I think it's hard to say what it is, but I think you can say what it includes, and about its nature, and it is integration. So the one thing that the center has that maybe nothing else has is total integration.
Absolutely. And we will have a great, you know, Sullivan talks about this all the time. The best way I can put it is that you can't understand the center by itself, because you can't understand Brahma by itself. This is what you really have to understand, is this living thing. This living thing. Center is the center of this. So center is things. This is you expressing yourself in every dimension, shaping this, and coming back to the center, returning to the center. So it is like it is a part of this system of living. So function inevitably leads to forms, and forms that are functionated will inevitably return to the center and build the center out. So it's this dance between the two. So it is the unmanifest here and the manifest. Brahma is both these together. There is no need to isolate it. It is basically the center of gravity of the universe. It is the stuff of the universe which is rotating around it, which makes it the center of gravity, and it is the center of gravity which is driving this. So it is like one system to understand. That's the Aristotelian way of looking at it. Even the conception of center as opposed to reality, that's kind of very much kind of Platonic way, which is there in almost all our language, all our thought. Most philosophies, Western philosophies, are Platonic. Most of the ways of using the words are Platonic, but this way of using it, which is very much biological, by the way, it's saying that life is in the living thing. And where is the life in a dog? It is in the living thing. And is it the dog? Where is the life? Well, you can't separate it out. It's like that. It's like it's trying to understand the nature of this living being that keeps going like this, something like that. Next up is Elena. Elena, go ahead.
Yes, and also, so yes, I just love the discussion because of everyone is bringing something, their perspective and their way of understanding. So there is also, so in alchemy, there are opposite elements. So once you focus, or so say you create an
Elena, please ask me
interaction between them.
Elena,
So
all
the
these
question is related to this, yes. So it's
no,
like when you
Elena, all these people have been looking at this diagram and have been discussing this for about 20, 30 years, 20, 30 hours. So that is, their questions are based on that. So don't try not to bring too many external things. Just ask me questions. I'll answer them.
Yes. So what? So the one of the components is important components is focus and attention and bringing it to the how to say that, organization. So my question to you, Shri, comes through Gita and then Indian cultural prism. What would be the focus, attention, and presence? That's my question.
Okay,
Thank you.
Excellent question. So actually, that is the biggest addition to this diagram. So on the surface, addition of these, splitting this, was motivated by Carl Jung's functions. Basically, this is Ni and Ne. It separates out the exploration capacity and concentration capacity. Here, it separates out the automatization, memorization of actions, and the sheer courage of initiating actions in the presence and the dance between them. But at the deepest level, the biggest addition is this. And that is actually, that corresponds to the Raja Yoga or Dhyana Yoga, which is actually called Raja Yoga because it's the highest of the yogas. It deals with the core concept of the Indian culture, that of concentration or dhyan. I had the concept, but I had it as, when I did my presentation on Jung, I spent a lot of time talking about importance of the radial movement. What I've done by adding this is that I've moved the responsibility of doing the radial movement as one of the components here, as something that is integrated with all the other things, just like all the other yogas. You know, you do Raja Yoga, which is all about training your mind to be focused on the center. And it is all about attention. Attention is the only primary resource you have. That's the only thing you have. Keeping that focused on truth, on the core of your being, on who you are, as Yasuhiko was saying, asking the question, who am I, who am I? You will never get there, but that's how you get there. Okay, what does that mean? It is saying, what does who am I mean? Questions are tools of directing attention. Who am I is a question that directs attention to this center. Who am I is the question of Raja Yoga. That's all Raja Yoga is about. You will remember if you attend Gita meetups, Yogeshwar keeps saying this. Periodically, he will bring this up of who am I, you know, asking who am I. That is all about Raja Yoga in the presence. And it is all about the wisdom as seen in Gita, because the knowledge that Gita talks about is not knowledge of the external world, but of knowledge of Atma or Brahma. That means of this and this entire loop of going back and forth. So fantastic question, Elena. Thank you very much. All right, folks. So I am delighted, so delighted to be working with you folks. I really like everybody's observations. I particularly like what Zheng had to say. And part of it is that, you know, I'm trying to develop this very fast, and I can think explicitly about only certain things. I'm reasonably good on intuition, so I end up kind of arranging things based on kind of many things together. And it is good to be asked about each of the, you know, some of the choices, and kind of not just details, but saying, okay, you know what? The unknown is much larger. How is that captured? So that's just fantastic. So thank you so much. And we'll see you tomorrow. Believe me, Louis Sullivan is much, 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 much better than me. And you're going to learn so much tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Bye, everybody.